And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis continuing to show ice pushing southward here, especially back up through here, making slow advances to the south and increasing again around Nunivak Island and even into the Kuskokwim Delta, with temperatures today falling below zero out through here on those northwest winds. Should see a pretty good increase in ice over the next couple of days in the bay here. Otherwise, for tonight, we've got some light snow here from Norton Sound right on up into that low center near the central Arctic coast, extending eastward there, but Brooks Range southward. Dry conditions, colder temperatures, still some lingering snow showers early on over the Talkeetna Mountains, maybe the Copper River Basin, and in toward northeast Bristol Bay or northeast Prince William Sound, and possible snow showers here over the Panhandle or mixed rain and snow. Next warm front here tomorrow spreads rain into the southern southeast coast there, with more of a snowy condition up to the north, and continues to dry out. Cold high pressure building into the interior, much colder temperatures all the way down into the Gulf of Alaska, and even the snow appears to end there on most of the Arctic coast. This trough, maybe some flurries associated with that, but nothing heavy by any means, and some light snow showers lingering here along the eastern Alaska Range area, as well as out here over the southeast Bering Sea, with this low here just southwest of Kodiak Island. Gusty northwest winds and snow there, especially on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula. Next system out to the west, bringing gale force winds and precipitation eastward here into the central Aleutians for Wednesday afternoon. Strongest winds up here in the north and northwest Bering Sea there, as it bumps up against this strong area of Arctic high pressure centered near Nome that extends southward across the Alaska Peninsula. That keeps it cold and dry over interior Alaska. Gusty northwest winds through the passes of the Alaska Range, maybe the Manuska Valley area, right on down into the Barren Islands, and possibly the North Gulf Coast here with low pressure just south of Yakutat. Looks like snow across the southeast coast. Could see 5 to 8 inches here around Juneau, Hoonah, Pelican, and those areas, with lighter snow down to the south. And for the coastal water forecast, we'll start with the south coast there. East winds 10 to 15 knots tomorrow. Central coast, west-northwest at 10 to 15 knots. And south to southeast winds 15 to 20 knots. For the north coast, southeast of 15 for Lynn Canal. And for Stevens Passage, south winds 10 knots, southeast of 15 for Clarence Strait. Moving on to Wednesday. West-northwest winds here, 20 knots for the central and south coast. On the north coast, north to northwest winds 15 to 20 knots, and the northwest wind at 15 there for Lynn Canal, southwest 15 Stevens Passage. Small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, southwest at 25. And for the North Gulf Coast tomorrow, west winds 25 knots, seas 8 to 9 feet. Prince William Sound, west wind 20 knots. Northwest winds 25 knots for the Barren Islands. Southern Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, westerlies at 25 knots, west winds at 20 for Northern Cook Inlet. And then on Wednesday, Northern Inlet here, north of Forelands North at 15 knots, northwest at 20 knots, Southern Cook Inlet, and gale force westerlies at 40 knots here for Kamishak Bay, turn northwest at 40 knots as they blow across the Barren Islands. 25 knot northwest winds, western North Gulf Coast, but lighter winds here to the east, Prince William Sound and the east side there. North to northwest winds at 15 knots. Kodiak Island tomorrow, west 15 knots. And then northwest winds here, 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Kind of a southeast wind there for Bristol Bay, but only at 15 knots. And then on Wednesday, the Alaska Peninsula, north to northwest winds 15 to 25 knots. North at 25 knots for Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, northwest winds 30 knots. Eastern Aleutians, northwest winds 20 to 35 knots tomorrow, and variable to south winds at 25 knots for Adak and Atka, and then swinging around to the east and southeast. Gale force east-southeast winds there west of Adak to Shemya at 35 to 40 knots. And then for Wednesday, western Aleutians, south winds 20 to 30 knots. Gale warnings Adak and Atka, south winds 35 to 40 knots there. And for the eastern Aleutians, south to southeast winds 30 to 35 knots. Southwest coast, South of Nunivak Island, small craft advisories, north winds 25 knots for Tuesday, northwest 25 for the Pribilofs, north at 20 for St. Matthew Island, northwest 20 for the Yukon Delta coast, and for Norton Sound and St. Lawrence Island, winds will be northwest at 25. Those fall back to about 15 knots from the northwest there on Wednesday. Yukon Delta coast pretty light, north at 10, 20 knot north winds for the Kuskokwim Delta coast, and good gales here for the northern Bering Sea and northwest Bering, St. Matthew Island, east 45 knots, southeast at 30 for the Pribilofs. And for the Chukchi Sea tomorrow, brisk wind advisories, north to northwest winds 25 to 30 knots. Western Arctic coast, northwest 15, laying down to 5 knots there for the central coast, and then west-southwest at 10 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And then for the day on Wednesday, east side here, west 20 to 25 knots, 15 knot west winds there for the central and western Arctic coast, and the Chukchi Sea, not too bad. Winds will be northwest at 15.